In this lesson, you will learn how to solve log equations. When you have one log equation on one side, rewrite it as an exponential equation and then solve. But before you do that, you really need to see where your x is, because if your x is already by itself, you could just enter the values into the calculator and solve for it. If you have more than one log on each side, then you would need to cancel those logs out and then solve. So let's do some examples. So number one, basically what you need to think about is the goal of this lesson is while you're solving logs is get rid of your logs somehow. So for number one, I already see my x is by itself. I would just enter that into the calculator and get your answer. But if you didn't do that, if I wanted to put this in exponential form, that would be 2 to the x equals 8. So then you would need to figure out 2 to what power would be 8. But really, again, I would just enter this here. And if you don't have the calculator that has a base option, you could put in log of 8 over log of 2. And you'll get 3. Because 2 to the third power is 8. I think the easiest way to do this is to plug them in. I would plug this into your calculator as well because the x is already by itself. So we would have, if you put this in your calculator, you would get, let's see, 3 times 3 is 9, negative 4. Because how I can tell is if I wrote this in exponential form, this would be 3 to the x equals 1 over 81. 1 over 81 is the same thing as saying 3 to the negative 4, but it's much easier to just enter that in your calculator. Number 3, we would use the properties of logs to solve these. 5 log 5 would cancel. Remember, because that's a 5 and a 5, so x would be 7. Okay, here I have a log on both sides, so cancel the logs and then solve it. So now I just have 10 minus 4x equals 10 minus 3x. To solve this, add 4x, add 4x. I get 10 equals 10 plus x. Subtract that 10, and you would get 0 equals x. You could have solved this any way you want to. Remember, we covered this in linear equations, as long as you know to drop the log. Okay, here's a really good example where you have to write it in exponential form. So I would have 5 to the third power equals all that, so 8 minus 7x. Then I would need to solve this. 5 to the third power is 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. Now, to solve this, you just need to solve for x. So if I move what's around the x first, so you need to subtract 8. 125 minus 8 is 117. Drop that negative 7x. Divide by negative 7. And this is simplified, so you can leave your answer like that. Okay, let's do a couple more. So if you have more than one log on one side, then you need to combine these using those properties. Since it's a subtraction, I can combine this by dividing x plus 1 over x equals 2. So you want to combine it because now I can write this in exponential form. So this is 8 squared equals x plus 1 over x. 8 squared is 64, which is over x plus 1 over x. Multiply both sides by x. So I have 64x equals x plus 1. And then this is just a linear equation, so subtract x to solve for x. And then finally divide by 63. Okay, for number 7, I'm going to do the same thing, except this is an addition. So to combine these two logs, I would need to multiply x plus 1 times x minus 1. Now I can write it in exponential form. So remember, you want to have one log so that you can write it in exponential form. That's how we get rid of that log. So if you can't cancel the log, it has to be exponential form. So 2 to the third power is 8. On this side, you would need to distribute. X times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is negative x. X times 1 is positive x. 1 times negative 1 is a negative 1. Next, I would combine like terms. Negative x plus x will cancel. Here, I can add 1 and use the square root property to solve this. To get rid of a square, we square root both sides. Square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. So x could be 3 or negative 3. But logs cannot be, all logs must be greater than or equal, no, just greater than 0. They can't be negative or 0. So if I was to plug this in, right, if I plug in 3 here, 3 plus 1 is 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. So 3 is an answer. But if I plug in the negative, you need to check your negatives. Here I have negative 3 plus 1. That's a negative 2. You can't get the log of a negative number. So you can't use that. So the only answer to that is x equals 3. So when you're solving logs, remember, if you have more than one log on one side, combine them. If you have a log on each side, cancel them out. If you just have one log and a number, you can write it in exponential form. But if the variable is already by itself, just put it in your calculator.